What's up, YouTube? Welcome into week 2 recap video from my Draftkings cash lineup. This one was a little bit of a struggle, especially whenever you compare it to what I did last week. Basically, a 100-point drop from week 1 to week 2. So there's going to be a lot of process refinement here, and basically a lot more negative to talk about than what there was last week. Last week was basically a hit across the board. A little bit of the wide receivers needed refined, but not much, really, all too much to really, bash or criticize in terms of my picks from last week. But yeah, this week was pretty rough. There were two bright spots in there. A couple things, maybe I think one thing that I'm gonna consider kind of unlucky. We'll get to that in a second, but a lot of other stuff in here that I think I should talk about on this video here. So without further ado, we'll just get right into it here. You can see this was the double up that I paid, $5 to get in, just $5 to get to the $10 double up cash, and I came in 22nd out of 23rd. Like I said, a 100-point drop, and from coming in first place in my double up last week. So starting at the top here at the positions, like I said, a couple bright spots. The first one is going to be Dak Prescott. He was at $6,300 for the week, finished with 28.6 fantasy points, had 269 and 3. Also added 69 rushing yards. He had that one big, like 50-something yard run, and a pick as well too. Almost got into the end zone for a rushing touchdown, which would have been really nice. I believe he got down to the 1, and then Zeke finished that drive off. But that extra touchdown would have, just been an extra cherry on top to an already fantastic performance from Dak. Basically, my process for this one, pretty simple. I had, played Carson Wentz against the Redskins defense in week 1. Dak Prescott was coming off of a fantastic game in week 1 where he had a perfect passer rating, and I thought he could continue that success as well too. I didn't really, like a lot of the quarterbacks down in the the sub 6,000 and the low $5,000, mid $5,000 range. So I just went with what I thought was going to be safe, and that was Dak Prescott at $6,300. So 2 for 2 so far on quarterbacks through 2 weeks, and I just hope to continue that trend going on here. 225 plus point performances in 2 straight weeks. So and every single week it gets more and more tempting to play Pat Mahomes, but that plus $7,000 salary is really hard, I think, in my opinion, to fit a couple other players, especially when I can get somebody like Dak Prescott in the $6,000 tier, around that plus or minus 300, and get similar output, maybe not the same, but similar. So quarterbacks we're good with there. At the running back position, I'm gonna again bounce down to Alvin Kamara, who was my RB1 on the week here. Last week it was Christian McCaffrey. This week it was Alvin Kamara, and it did not pan out as well. Obviously, 7 fantasy points, 45 yards on the ground, 1 reception for 15 through the air. This one, like I mentioned before, 73.9% owned. So a lot of the other guys also took a hit in this double up. I'm counting this one as unlucky because of the Drew Brees injury, and Teddy Bridgewater had to come in. I'm not sure if Bridgewater just didn't look Kamara's way, like what the issue was really there. He got workload on the ground. I believe he had 13 or 14 carries, but the receiving volume just wasn't there, and I think that is mainly due to the fact that Drew Brees left the game very early due to a thumb injury that I think is actually going to be quite serious for his season going forward. So I'm chalking this one up to unlucky. It was, that hurts a lot whenever you have your starting running back at a plus $8,000 running back, put up single digit numbers. That's a big killer right there. And I'm not saying that he was the main reason I didn't cash. It was just just not something that really my lineup needed here. So that's what I'm going to chalk it up to there for Alvin Kamara. Just quite unlucky with the loss of his starting quarterback. So moving on, RB2, Josh Jacobs. This one was, kind of a later ad for me in the week. As I was going through reading some other people's articles and stuff about Josh Jacobs. I had read the one from one of our DFS guys, Scott, from at FF Statistics, and he mentioned Josh Jacobs and his price point as a player to keep an eye on for your player pools, and it was really good advice given the fact that Josh Jacobs' salary was super cheap. I believe it was either sub 5,000 or right around the $5,000 range there. And coming off of the Monday night game for Josh Jacobs, where he had a ton of workload and even got workload in the receiving game as well, 2 touchdowns, all of that. It was just too much of a workload for me to pass up at that price, at a very cheap price. One thing that I think I overlooked, and for this matchup specifically, is the fact that the Raiders were playing the Chiefs. They were, probably going to be down for the majority of the game, and they were. And I should have probably seen that one coming, leaving, Josh Jacobs to have kind of minimal targets, at least not the same targets or in volume that he had the previous week. You can see here against Denver, he had 23 attempts and then added another reception for 28 yards as well too, and 2 touchdowns. So with that type of volume, I thought that he could be valuable at his price, but that volume was kind of hard for him to hit whenever you look at the fact that they were playing against the Chiefs. They're going to be down a lot. They're going to have to throw, and to be honest, that Denver game might end up kind of being a fluke given how well that the Oakland Raiders played. And again, just going on to the Kansas City Chiefs, 99 rushing yards, so 9.9 fantasy points. It didn't put up anything through the receiving game, and just an overall poor performance from Josh Jacobs. Still had basically a double ROI, but just because of how cheap he was. But that's just something that I need to keep looking at, is not really targeting running backs who are not going to be involved in the passing game, especially in games where the game script is going to be negative for them as the game goes on, for getting carries and stuff like that. And instead pivot to guys like Sony Michel would have been a good pivot, who was still in the $6,000 range, or try and get somewhere up a little bit higher, like an Aaron Jones or something else like that, who has the upside of both receiving and rushing at the same time. So process refinement there for me for playing Josh Jacobs here, who again was 82.6% drafted, and I think that's because of just because his price, he was so affordable, and because of this game he might end up staying in that price range still. So looking ahead to week 3, it might be something that we look for from Josh Jacobs in week 3, depending on the matchup. But it has to be a good matchup here, as Denver was, but Kansas City was not. So moving down to my flex position, the final running back, 91.3% owned here, Austin Eckler. And again, I think that was because of his price. He was at $6,100, a very nice price point for the starting running back for the Chargers, who was coming off of a fantastic week in week 1, a 3-touchdown performance. Then he didn't have the 3 touchdowns, but it was still a very fantastic game. My other bright spot of this lineup, 24.3 fantasy points, had the rushing touchdown, 66 on the ground, 67 through the air, 6 receptions. It did fumble the ball, so it could have been just a little bit better without the fumble, but a fantastic performance from Austin Eckler, a 4-time ROI there. And that one was just, even though that they only scored 10 points, he got the touchdown. Even without the touchdown, it still would have been a 3-time ROI game, which would have been really nice. And again, because of his price point, it was just kind of too easy to just plug him in, similar to Dalvin Cook last week when he was at 6,000. And another player that I want to bring up here, because Dalvin Cook looks like he could be an every week type starter type of deal. So I'm going to be interested to see where he winds up being price wise for week 3, and how many how well we can fit him into our lineups and everything, because he's getting the volume. The receptions are slowly coming in there as well too, and it's just that he's just too good to not be in your lineups, especially if he's at a sub $8,000 price point. But yeah, Austin Eckler, fantastic performance from him. Really happy with that one, and I'll just keep sticking with the W on that for Eckler, as it was for Dalvin Cook last week too. So that was my 3 running backs for the 2 running backs and the flex. Like I said, I always like to have 3 running backs because of the volume and the upside, to have the rushing and the receiving floor and upside as well too. So that's what I go for from my flex position, as well as the 2 running backs, and didn't really hit on that with Josh Jacobs. So that's a big miss from me, and I paid for it, it would seem. But process refinement, that's what we're here for. That's what we're talking out. That's what we continue to work on as the season goes on. Moving on here, the wide receiver position. So this one had a little bit of an up and down for me as the day went on. The big miss, I should say, was Sammy Watkins, who was, I believe, $7,500 or somewhere around that price point. 21.7% played here. And this one was, me chasing the week 1 production. I wasn't expecting him to go for 203 again. That was a little ridiculous. But as the wide receiver 1 for the Kansas City Chiefs in a game that I thought, he would have, that same connection with Pat Mahomes and everything, and I thought that he could score and do well and be safe from a floor standpoint, but also offer the ceiling. That just really wasn't the case. Mecole Hardman had the long bomb touchdown. Actually had another touchdown that was called back as well too. And Sammy Watkins, just because the Chiefs got out in front so fast so quickly, and just didn't happen to get the one of the 4 touchdown passes from Pat Mahomes that led to a poor production for output from him. 6 receptions, 49 yards, 10.9 points, which would be fine from any other wide receiver if they were at the 45 or the 4,000 point range, but not at the 75. That's not what you're looking for. And just something else that, I wish I didn't pay up for wide receiver. That's, was against my original lineup build, was, spending down for Josh Jacobs. So I thought I could afford to spend up at wide receiver. I've learned the error of my ways on that one. And, maybe that just might be an overreaction from one poor week where both the running back and the wide receiver didn't do well. But I think I need to go back to the original. Don't really look too far into the price point for running back for the deeper guys. They're cheap for a reason. And I need to, just continue to attack the higher end running backs, attack them, and, pick smart and wise. And then same with the wide receivers, find guys in the, the mid 5,000 point range as well too, and do that. So Sammy Watkins was a miss on my part, and I think a lot of people were kind of divisive on him as well too, especially in cash game, on what to do with Sammy Watkins. Moving on though, so Michael Gallup and Terry McLaurin, 2 guys that I did like this week, and McLaurin especially was kind of chasing what he did in week 1, which ended up working out. He had 5 for 62 and 1, was just as targeted, just as much targeted as he was in week 2 as he was in week 1. So that's what I was looking for. 4.3% owned. So I was the only person in this cash lineup, in this double up, to play him in my lineup. 17.2 fantasy points, so that was really solid there. Exactly what I'm looking for Terry McLaurin, a sub $4,000 wide receiver there. Him and Trey Quinn both were sub 4,000. I went with McLaurin for the ceiling, but also the safety of having the targets as well too. Without the touchdown, I still would have been happy with it, given that it would have been a near 3.5 time ROI without the touchdown. With the touchdown, he's at a 4, so that was very solid, and I was cheering that on the whole entire time that I was watching them drive, especially on that last drive where he did end up scoring. I believe he had 2 or 3 targets inside the 10-yard line, which really helped him out, and the one he did bring down and score on. But yeah, Michael Gallup, the other wide receiver as well too, in the same game. Again, the only person in the double up to play him, and 6 for 68 was a solid game from him. That's exactly what I'm looking for from my wide receivers, is the wide receivers who can put up those numbers, without the touchdown, the 6 for 68, and just be consistent, give me the floor, and if he would have scored, that would have been nice. That would have put him up at a near 19-point game, and that would have been, just even more fantastic from a wide receiver who is in the sub $6,000, the mid $5,000 range at a price point there. So I was very happy with what Michael Gallup put up as well too. Amari Cooper and Jason Witten got the touchdowns. And so did Devin Smith, or whatever his name was, got the long bomb, and then Zeke as well too. So that's just touchdown variance there, but I was happy with what Michael Gallup put out. So just exactly what I was looking for from a wide receiver standpoint there is Michael Gallup and Terry McLaurin. Moving on to the tight end position, Evan Ingram, 8.7% owned. So me and one other guy played Ingram, which, man, looking back on it now, I really wish I didn't. 6 for 48. So it was all right, but it just was not what I was really expecting. In a game without Sterling Shepard, in a game that I felt like, you could probably predict that they were going to have to throw for a good majority of the game. It just, none of it went to Evan Ingram, which was really frustrating. And I was watching the game, and a lot of throws got thrown to Benny Fowler and Russell Shepard and, Cody Lattimore and Saquon Barkley out of the backfield, and Rhett Ellison got a few, and then Evan Ingram finally had a couple at the end of the game there. He was doing really bad at the beginning. Like the first 3 quarters, he had 2 or 3 points, and I was really worried on that, especially from a tight end who was 55. I believe he was 5,600 there. So only a 2-time ROI, but that was just really not what I was expecting from Evan Ingram, and I wish I had paid down at the tight end position. Mark Andrews had a fantastic game. And a bunch of other tight ends as well too did really well. Even Travis Kelce, if I would have paid up a little bit more for Travis Kelce, would have been a lot better too. But just really was not what I was expecting from Evan Ingram. And like Sammy Watkins was also kind of a divisive player on whether or not you should play him in cash. I thought he would have been targeted a lot more than he actually was, and it just that sucked. So last but not least here, my defense, the only person to play the Cincinnati Bengals defense, and boy, did I wish I didn't. -2 fantasy points. They did have 1 pick, but allowed over 35 points to the San Francisco 49ers. My reasoning for playing the Cincinnati Bengals, so they were a 1-point favorite actually at home against the Niners, who didn't look all too good against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They did have a couple touchdowns called back because of penalties, but other than that, just wasn't really the performance that a lot of people would have expected from the San Francisco 49ers. And I thought that they were going to continue that, playing against Cincinnati. Again, another game that they would have had to travel back to San Francisco and then back to Cincinnati. Although looking at it, they probably would have went straight to Cincinnati. At least, Kyle Shanahan, I think, might have, thought about that. They stayed in Tampa and then go to Cincinnati instead and kind of practice there instead of doing the whole trip thing again. But San Francisco balled out. Garoppolo balled out. Everything just worked in the 49ers' favor, and just really was not good from playing Cincinnati. And whenever you watched what the Miami Dolphins did and what the New England Patriots defense did to the Miami Dolphins with 2 pick sixes, a whole bunch of sacks, it's going to be hard not to play the defense that plays Miami from here on out. And I said to my friend, I said, do you think we're going to get to a point where it's still chalk for us to play the defense that's playing against Miami, even though they're, over $4,000? And he said, yeah, it's going to be pretty easy to still do that. And so it's going to be interesting to see where the price point is for the defense that plays Miami next week. And, what kind of lineup you can make around them. I'm still a sub $3,000 defense guy because I think you don't need to spend up for the defenses like that, because I think you can find a defense down there. But man, this Miami Dolphins team might be, a wild exception. And even with the news of them trading Kenyon Drake and Minkah Fitzpatrick wants to leave and all this other stuff, it just really doesn't seem like they're trying all too hard to put out a decent roster, because they want to tank. They want the 101. They want to accumulate a bunch of draft picks. And I don't know how long it's going to take even for Ryan Fitzpatrick to get benched for Josh Rosen, but it really just seems like whoever, just, plug and play, don't even think about it. Just play the team that's playing Miami, and you're going to be good there. You have a decent chance for a shutout, if not 10 or less points. You're going to get some sacks, maybe a pick or two with Fitzpatrick throwing. And Rosen isn't really even all that much better. So so we're just going to really have to play that one out. And -2 fantasy points from Cincinnati did not help at all. So even if they would have had 4 or 5, that would have been fine with me too. But overall, not a fantastic week from the DFS side of things. Really, the whole fantasy week was kind of up and down. A lot of studs not doing well. A lot of kind of random guys doing well too. of course, some of the the regulars like Pat Mahomes, did well as well, and all that other stuff. So just I think a strange week overall, but we're gonna be back at it again week 3. We're gonna see where the pricing is and everything. So excited to get through that venture with you guys and see what we come out with for a week 3 lineup here. With the pricing should be dropping Monday or maybe late Sunday. I'm recording this Sunday night, so maybe late tonight or early tomorrow. The pricing should be out. So excited to keep the grind up with you guys and keep working on this process, and we'll get better as the time goes on. That's the goal. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please subscribe and like the video if you liked it. Comment down below. I want to hear you guys' comments. How did this week treat you? What did you hit on? What did you miss on? I want to work on the process together, talk some DFS with a lot of other people, and see what we can come up with kind of together. So make sure that you leave that comment down below, like, subscribe, turn the notifications on, and thank you guys so much. You can find me on Twitter at AmazeHayes_, and the site, all the DFS stuff that we pump out for the site too is at FFstatistics_ on Twitter. So again, thank you guys so much for watching. We will catch you guys later. Deuces.